Welcome back to another episode of War in Cali. In this episode, I'ma detail the story of how a pimp was killed by a father wanting revenge. Barry Gilton was a San Francisco man who grew up in Frisco's Fillmore district. The Fillmore district is also known by residents as Fillmo. Fillmo had a lot of history in that area of the city and was a very visited and populated African American community. At a point, it was a center of jazz for African Americans, but along the years, things would change in the area, especially with the drug trade booming in the 80s. Several crews were formed all over the Fillmore district, and by the 90s, Barry was rumored to be a part of a crew called CDP. In the 90s, Barry was a high school basketball player, but with his environment, he was still fully involved in the streets. While in high school, Barry would meet the mother of his future kids, being Lupe and Mercado. They would meet at Mission High School. They would start their long relationship as teenagers, but by 1995, Barry would be convicted of drug dealing and possession of a controlled substance. Upon being released, Barry would try to get on the right path and become a family man. Lupe and Barry would eventually have 4 kids, 3 sons, and 1 daughter. Barry would even become a youth basketball coach and teach his kids his past experiences and try to lead them the right way. But Barry and Lupe's daughter Leticia would start to rebel in her teenage years, being disrespectful and doing bad in school. Leticia would be sent to live with Barry's cousin Antonio in LA for a change of scenery. But even LA would be a costly decision. LA's underworld is much deeper than Crips and Bloods and other gangs that operate out the region. They also have a heavy pimp scene. The Bay Area has one as well, but with Leticia leaving, she wasn't under her parents' supervision. So this would eventually lead to Leticia eventually meeting a local pimp and gangbanger named Calvin Sneed. Calvin was from Compton and was a reported member of the Nutty Block Crips and was heavily involved in the streets, leading to him getting shot in the past. Barry and Lupe would find out about their daughter's new career in LA and immediately tried to get their 17-year-old daughter to come back. They went to police several times, but wasn't helped. They even put out several missing reports and posted about their daughter, doing anything to try to make her come back home. They would even make several drives to LA, trying to bring Leticia back, but she wouldn't come. During this time, it would be an attempt on Calvin's life on May 27, 2013. Many people would think it would come from Barry and Lupe, but they would deny their involvement. Leticia would end up going back with her parents to San Francisco, but this wouldn't mean she would cut contact with Calvin. While being back in Frisco, Leticia and her parents would get into a big argument, which Leticia told her parents she was going back to LA and going back to being with Calvin. Leticia would call Calvin to pick her up, and Calvin would be in San Francisco on June 4th, 2013. His reason was to take Leticia back, but his plans would go a lot different. Barry would be assisted by his cousin Antonio and another man named Alfonso. They would wait till Calvin appeared in the area of Barry's home and follow him. With the help of Lupe letting them know her daughter's plans and where Calvin would be, this would lead to Calvin being shot and killed at an intersection. Barry and Lupe would later both be picked up, where they both seemed calm and collected, and even asked police, "What would you do if your daughter was being exploited?" Barry and Lupe will both be arrested and plead not guilty. Antonio and Alfonso will also be charged. Police would take this deeper than just Calvin's murder, but instead, police would try to piece evidence that Barry, Antonio, and Alfonso were all gang members of the CDP, and they would try to make this a RICO Act and racketeering charge. It wouldn't be enough evidence to prove this or that Barry was even in a gang. Barry would serve 7 years behind bars fighting his case, and Lupe would serve 7 as well. Both Barry and Lupe will be acquitted of all charges. Barry and Lupe will walk free, but Alfonso and Antonio wouldn't get the same outcome. They would plead guilty to the shooting and also to the racketeering charges. They would receive 25 years and 22 years. Calvin's dad Charles will later be interviewed, and he will talk about his son. He would say he didn't deserve to die when talking about Calvin. He said you can call him the dirtiest low-down dog in the world, but he wasn't killing anybody. He didn't deserve that. What Lupe and Barry did, most people would have did the same thing when defending their family and their daughter. And most people wouldn't have regret that decision that they made. They are both free, and this case has been over for years. This will conclude this episode. If you haven't already, make sure you check out my previous episodes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.